Thank you, Mr Speaker. The current Chancellor comes here today as the 7th Chancellor in 7 years, a mere 55 days after the last Chancellor came to this House to present his chaotic mini-budget. His predecessor managed to crash the economy in 26 minutes, but this Chancellor has spent the past 53 minutes trying to patch up those mistakes. The reality is that we will be all living with the disastrous consequences of Trussonomics for some time to come. He's brought forward new targets because he's failing to meet the old ones, and his difficult choices are of nothing compared to what many of our constituents face. The Tories spent the summer squabbling in a leadership contest when they should have been preparing for this difficult winter ahead. And now the UK is £30 billion worse off because of the incompetence of the Conservative Party. Scotland is paying a heavy price indeed for being in this union. And now we see the Tories attempting to cut their way out of a recession. It will not work. Public sector workers deserve a proper pay rise to face the cost of living crisis the Tories have created. And the Scottish Government doesn't have the flexibility this Chancellor has to borrow or to make changes in year. Their existing budgets have already been squeezed and reprioritised, and there is nothing left to cut. Now, the Chancellor says that Scotland will get £1.5 billion in Barnett consequentials, but yet the Scottish Government's budget is worth £1.7 billion less than when it was introduced last December. So Scotland is being shortchanged yet again. So will he listen carefully to what John Swinney has actually asked for and provide the funding that Scotland deserves? The Chancellor is proposing fiscal tightening on a scale not seen since George Osborne, and we are still living with the very real consequences of those poverty-inducing policies. The two-child limit, the rape clause, the brutal benefit sanctions. Glasgow Centre for Population Health have been clear that the previous round of Tory austerity caused 330,000 excess deaths. More of the same from this Chancellor is a price society cannot afford. Restoring the triple lock and uprating benefits by inflation is not some victory to be celebrated, but our Nardos have described it as a minimum first step. And the rate of inflation announced by the Chancellor is not the actual rate of inflation now, nor perhaps will it be the rate of inflation by the time this comes into force. They are not keeping step with the cost of living again. Any compassionate government with an ounce of humanity would not have to be dragged here to make such a decision. He talks about uprating the benefit cap. He should scrap the benefit cap. In Scotland, we've introduced the groundbreaking Scottish Child Payment and increased it to £25 per child per week, now available up to the age of 16. There's no two-child limit in Scotland because we value every child and want them all to have the best future. Will he commit to the same? The Chancellor mentioned nothing in his statement for those struggling on no recourse to public funds. Nothing either for asylum seekers trying to survive on just £40 a week. Will he increase that support, or better yet, will he allow them to work and to contribute, as so many want to do? Inflation is running at a 41-year high at 11.1%. For those in lower-income households, the Resolution Foundation says that this is 12.5%, as more of their income goes on the essentials. The price of food is up 16.4% in a year. The very basics like bread and milk and pasta all increasing and squeezing household budgets. Combined with the soaring cost of energy, households are finding it impossible to make ends meet. Cornwall Insight have estimated that the energy price cap next year may come in at an eye-watering £3,702. And I appreciate what he has said on energy support, but his energy support package must be wider and deeper. It must lift those who are stuck in prepayment meters and make sure that they can turn the heating on. Will he listen to National Energy Action, who are calling for a targeted energy price guarantee similar to a social tariff set at £1,500 annually until October 2024? They say all households and mean-tested benefits and disability benefits, those in receipt of attendance allowance and carers allowance, it should be going to people who are living in less than two-thirds of the median household income and targeted to people living in areas of multiple deprivation. We all know that energy bills are not going to be reducing anytime soon, and the Chancellor must ensure that people get the help that they need to stay safe and warm. Insulation schemes should have happened already. The UK Government cut dramatically back on schemes while the Scottish Government invested. Over 100,000 homes in Scotland have been made more energy efficient, while the UK Government have ignored the problem. And now they say today, wait until 2025. It's not even jam tomorrow, it's huddle under a blanket for 3 years until we get to you. It's absolutely ludicrous. Will he consider not a cap but a rent freeze, as the Scottish Government have done to help renters? For those who are struggling with their mortgages, will the Chancellor do all he can to encourage banks to support their customers? And will he fix and expand the restrictive support for mortgage interest scheme to make it more accessible to those who need it? Mr. Speaker, there is little in this statement to give hope to businesses. Many who managed to survive through the pandemic are now really struggling to keep going. Increased labour and energy costs, supply chain difficulties, the crash in the pound have all made a difficult situation so much worse. I have raised many times in this place the impossibly high contracts companies are having to sign for their energy bills right now, and he was not at all clear with them how he expects them to keep going once the reprieve finishes in the spring. They cannot wait any longer for answers in this, because for too many it will be too much. We know insolvencies are already on the rise, and with companies going bust, rising unemployment will inevitably follow. And we know that recession has a bigger impact on younger workers. And when we look in his statement today, what we see is the minimum wage rates still lagging behind for younger workers being discriminated against on the basis of their age. It continues to be unacceptable. There was nothing here in his statement about carbon capture and storage in the north east of Scotland. Why not? There was a 45% hike on electricity generators, more than oil and gas, which will hammer Scotland's renewable sector. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to give the Chancellor some opportunities to bring some cash into the UK government coffers. The LSE say that ending the non-dom status could bring £3.2 billion in additional tax. Taxing dividends at the same rate as income from work would stand to raise over £6 billion a year. Mr. Speaker, for some time now, big companies have been engaging in significant share buybacks. Oil and gas, financial services and other companies are using share buybacks because their mega profits are more than they know what to do with. They aren't being invested in new development, they're simply being creamed off. It's estimated that FTSE 100 firms are now due to return £55.5 billion to their shareholders via share buybacks this year. The IPPR estimate that a one-off 25% windfall tax on share buybacks of FTSE-listed companies could raise £11 billion any single year as a one-off windfall tax. And even if companies are discouraged from buying back shares under this scheme, this would then lead to higher reinvestment in development rather than in profits. So why would the Chancellor pass up such an economic opportunity? The Chancellor should also grow the tax base by increasing immigration and improving the lot who have already done us the significant honour of coming to live, work and study in our communities. We should thank them, not tell them that they are not welcome. It's beyond time that the UK has a sensible grown-up conversation about immigration, and on these SNP benches we are clear that immigration is an economic good. The OBR forecasts that higher net migration reduces pressures on government debt over time, and he should consider this. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to come to the policy that unites all the unionist parties in this House: Brexit. Tories, Labour, the Lib Dems, all Brexiteers now fully committed to this futile project of deliberate self-destruction. Dr Swati Dhingra of the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee told the Treasury Select Committee yesterday, "It's undeniable now that we are seeing a much bigger slowdown in trade in the UK than in the rest of the world. Wages are lower, business investments lower, and the UK is underperforming in both imports and exports. This political choice has brought us here today to the Chancellor's decisions, which will affect us all, but will hit the least well off the very hardest." The economist Michael Saunders said this week, if we hadn't had Brexit, we probably wouldn't be talking about an austerity budget. Put that on the side of a bus. Hear, hear. Mr. Speaker, Scotland did not vote for this. We did not choose austerity and we did not choose Brexit. The OBR say that living standards are to fall by 7% over the next 2 years. It ought to be of no surprise to anybody that just shy of half of Scots think the UK won't exist in its current form in the next 5 years. Yeah, yeah. This is a UK so weak that no one would wish to join it. Mr. Speaker, Scotland cannot be forced to stay in broken Brexit Britain.
Chancellor.
Mr. Speaker, I thank her for her comments, but I do have to say she's complaining about economic instability damaging business in Scotland, but she supports the most destabilising policy of all, which is separation from the United Kingdom. She complained about Brexit, but 1 million voters in Scotland voted for Brexit, and we are implementing the will of the British people. Look, behind the sparring in this House, we actually have very good relations with the Scottish Government, and the Chief Secretary of the Treasury has already met with John Swinney, the Finance Minister, and we have good cooperation. I do need to correct her on one point. She said that we're not investing in energy efficiency. What I said, if she listened to my words, is that this Parliament, we are spending £6.6 billion in energy efficiency, and there will be a further £6 billion from 2025. Now, I understand that separation means more to her than anything else in politics. But families in Scotland today heard other things. They heard £600 million for the Scottish NHS, £385 million for schools, over £4 billion to help Scottish families with their energy bills, and that's on top of £4 billion to build the latest frigates. And that is because we are more than neighbours. We are family, and Conservatives always back families.